Are the Senate Commerce and Labor Subcommittee on Labor and Employment come to order? Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Marsden. Here. Senator Obenshane. Here. Senator Somerville.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 11 bills, 8 of which I think are not getting rolled or are not getting rolled. And we have about an hour and 5 minutes to get through as much as we can. So if anybody has witnesses or whatever, make sure you let us know that. So, okay, I see one hand, 2 hands. So, let me start with Senator Boysko. I've talked to her about Senate Bill 1. We'll do that one first. So Senator Boysko, Senate Bill 1.
Thank you so much. Yeah. You know, you gotta, it is the best one. This is the best bill. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, Senate Bill number 1 is Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. And I know this is not the first time this committee has heard this bill. We have seen some great momentum around paid leave both here in Virginia and federally. It continues to be discussed, and the pandemic certainly has been an illustrative example of why people need it. My bill would establish a new insurance program under the umbrella of the Virginia Employment Commission. It would be funded by a new payroll withholding, much like unemployment insurance, and would ensure that all working Virginians have the opportunity to take up to 12 weeks of paid leave in a calendar year if they are experiencing a qualifying event, such as the birth of a child or a personal or family health crisis. In 2020, the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee heard the bill and requested a study to look at paid family and medical leave programs in other states and how we might establish such a program here in Virginia. And it is that study that underpins this bill. In 2021, the Joint Money Committees funded an extensive actuarial study to explore a handful of different models, insurance rates, and other pertinent elements of the proposed program. The actuarial study made some strong recommendations as they relate to rates and innovation return to work programs. The actuarial study notes that, and I quote, Virginia workers are currently covered by a patchwork of federal programs and firm-based leave programs. The Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA program, has offered eligible workers up to 12 weeks of job-protected unpaid family and medical leave since 1994. However, eligibility conditions limit the protections to approximately 56% of the workforce, a percentage that has not improved in at least the last decade. Although Virginia-specific data on FMLA and private coverage is not available, private employers have increasingly offered short-term disability and paid family leave benefits to their workers. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics National Compensation Survey, private employers nationwide offering short-term disability access rose from 37% in 2011 to 41% in 2021, and paid family leave access from 11 to 23% over the same period. However, many workers are less likely to be covered, particularly our part-time workers, our lower wage workers, and small business employees. Furthermore, I'd like to add that there are many strong economic arguments for a statewide paid family medical leave framework, especially in our current climate. Paid leave is part of a package of family-friendly economic priorities that will help curb long-term inflation trends by investing in long-term economic capacity and enhancing the ability of more Americans to participate productively in the economy, per a letter signed last year by 17 Nobel Prize winners in economics. Paid leave is the antidote to the Great Resignation. A 2017 Ernst & Young survey found that more than 90% of companies with paid leave policies said that their policy had a positive or a neutral impact on profitability, productivity, and morale. It would help add trillions of dollars to our national GDP. If we could reach gender parity in the paid workforce by 2025, it would add $4.3 trillion to our GDP, according to a McKinsey report. Paid leave makes it easier for workers to take time off without quitting, while ensuring employers don't shoulder more cost for time off, training, and replacement. Worker shortages are dire across many industries. We talk about it all the time, like in hospitality and healthcare, that don't typically offer robust employer-provided benefits like paid sick time and family leave. They're especially hobbled. Meanwhile, private employers who already offer generous leave benefits that surpass this framework can keep doing what they're doing. Our objective here is to establish a floor, not a ceiling. Workplace policies matter to prospective employees. A 2016 Deloitte survey found that 77% of workers said paid leave offerings had some impact on their decision about where to work. Recruiting talent is expensive, especially in today's economy. 2012 analysis from the Center for American Progress found that replacing an employee can cost an employer about 1/5 of that worker's annual salary. Working parents, particularly working mothers, have fallen out of the workforce in unprecedented numbers throughout the pandemic. With the daycare industry in a general state of free fall and consistent in-person school no longer that given that it once was, a continued lack of paid leave could drive and keep even more parents and disproportionately mothers out of the workforce. I have a number of people here who would like to speak to you about it, who adamantly believe that paid leave is long overdue in the Commonwealth, and I'd ask that you give them an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. Any questions to the patron? No question.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boysko,
Okay.
before you start discussing, I have a technical amendment on line 438. After membership of, strike 13, insert 15.
Is there a motion to the amendment? Second. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. The amendment's adopted. Senator Boysko, I think you have, what, 3 or 4 speakers?
I have some speakers.
Okay, can we keep them down to 1 minute each?
1 minute each. So I think Christina Hagan is my first speaker. She works for the Family Friendly Economy.
Okay.
Is it already back this Hi, I'm Abby Conley from Henrico, Virginia. I am currently unemployed due to the pandemic and lack of paid leave. I'm trying to find jobs, but it's hard to work around childcare. It's a problem for most people, especially women. I was offered 3 months unpaid leave from my non-FMLA covered job when I had my son in 2017. I had to go out early, so I lost a few weeks, almost a month, on bed rest due to high blood pressure. So that left me with only 9 unpaid weeks to heal from a C-section, manage that postpartum high blood pressure, new medicines, exclusively pumping around the clock and caring for a baby who did not sleep. It was not enough time. We were extremely sleep deprived, stressed, and only had one goal: keep that baby alive. So I really ask for paid leave to help that sandwich generation between aging parents and new parents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, my name is Christina Hagan, and I am the State Director of the Virginia Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy. We advocate for economic policies that lift Virginia women and families, and I'm here to express our full support and gratitude to Senator Boysko for introducing Senate Bill 1 to establish a comprehensive universal paid family and medical leave framework here in Virginia. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented significant challenges for Virginians across the Commonwealth, and women have been impacted the most. We have got to do better if we're going to work to keep women in the workforce and prevent them from burning out, and ensuring that every Virginian has access to paid family medical leave is key to achieving that goal. No worker should be required to choose between caring for a sick child or a family member and providing for their family, yet only 20% of private sector workers today had access to paid leave in 2020, and that number drops to only 8% for workers earning less than $14 an hour. So just now, Senator Boysko highlighted some great economic arguments. We heard from Abby, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to hear from Natasha in just a moment with the Richmond LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. But those are just a couple of examples that really, I think, highlight the urgent need for a solution to this challenge in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hagan. Sounds just like an APR disclosure on a TV event. Next up.
I won't go that fast. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I hope all of you are doing well today. My name is Christian Martinez. I'm an advocacy specialist for CASA. We are an immigrant advocacy organization that serves 10,000 Latino, immigrant, and working class Virginians. CASA supports SB 1. The main group impacted by unpaid leave are low-income individuals. While some people may have the privilege and being able to take off work for 3 months, those of us without the funds to survive that long without pay often have no choice to turn to public assistance. According to the AmericanProgress.org, research shows that an overwhelming majority of California employers believe that paid sick leave has had a positive or neutral effect on their business operations. Studies have also shown that paid family leave leads to business savings by increasing employee retention, lowering turnover costs, improving productivity, and enhancing worker morale and loyalty. We as a Commonwealth absolutely must care for one another in our times of need for the betterment of our community and long-term economy. Let's pass SB1 and support all hardworking Virginians. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of this subcommittee. I'm Nicole Westcott Hayes. I'm here on behalf of the American Heart Association. Recognizing the equity and health impacts of paid family medical leave is the position of American Heart Association to advocate for paid leave policies that address medical leave, caregiver leave, and parental leave, cover as many workers as possible, and offer sufficient wage replacement, ensuring lower income workers have enough wage replacement to allow them to take advantage of paid leave policies. That's why we support Senator Boysko's Senate Bill 1. Also, on a private note, in January of 2016, I spent make the daily decisions of whether or not I was going to continue working to take care of my children or go home to take care of my dying mother. I was lucky enough to have coworkers who donated leave. Those types of decisions should not be left to the kindness of strangers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. My name is Tara Gibson. I'm here on behalf of Virginia Building Trades, and we support this bill.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Charlie Jackson on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. I want to thank Senator Boysko for putting in the bill. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kraus-Mays.
Doris Kraus-Mays, Virginia AFL-CIO, and we support the bill.
Thank you.
Kim Bobo, Virginia Interfaith Center, we support the bill too.
Thank you, Ms. Bobo. We have some people, looks like in the virtual world. We've already, I think, taken about 5 minutes of testimony. Maybe they could just state their name if they represent an organization where they support or oppose.
Natalie Snyder, please unmute and begin your testimony. Natalie Snyder, please unmute.
Hey, I'm Natalie Snyder, State Advocacy Director for AARP Virginia, and I'm here on behalf of the over 1 million caregivers here in Virginia to say that we do support the bill, and I thank Senator Boysko for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chloe Edwards, please unmute and begin your testimony, followed by Susan Burke.
Good afternoon. Chloe Edwards with Voices for Virginia's Children, where our mission is to improve the lives of Virginia's children, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards.
I'm Susan Burke. I'm co-vice president for public policy of AAUW of Virginia, a national organization that supports and promotes equity for women and girls. And with equity comes economic security. AAUW of Virginia, with its 1,000 members, strongly supports this bill and measures to provide paid family and medical leave for employers and employees. Thank you.
Kenneth Gillum, please unmute and begin your testimony, followed by Elizabeth Boulder.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. Kenneth Gilliam, Policy Director with New Virginia Majority, and we strongly support the bill. I want to thank the patron for carrying it this year.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliam.
Elizabeth Bolden Clopton, please unmute and begin your testimony, followed by McKellar Crosby.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am here with Vocal. We support the bill. Paid family and medical leave would ensure that hardworking Virginians can take more than a few days away from work to care for themselves or a loved one when serious illness, including mental health or substance use challenges, strikes, or to welcome a new child to your family. We support passage of SB 1.
Thank you.
Last speaker. In McKellar Crosby, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Thank you for having me. I'm Nat McKellar Crosby, president of the Richmond LGBTQ Chamber. I also serve on the board of Main Street Alliance, Family Friendly Virginia, and the LGBTQ Plus Advisory Board for the Commonwealth. Paid family medical leave, this is a small business boosting policy first and foremost, and we definitely support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody here live to speak in opposition to the bill? Is there anybody in the Zoom room in opposition? Oh, a couple. Can you get the Zoom one queued up also?
If you are in the Zoom room and wish to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Go ahead, sir. Keep it to a
Mr.
minute.
Chairman, Keith Martin with Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We really do appreciate the hard work that the senator has done over numerous years on this issue. And because of her work, we actually had the business community come together and looked at what we can do to help facilitate greater use of family medical leave. And what we've come up with is something that we've worked with Senator Favola, the SEC, and other business groups to come up with legislation that we think you're going to hear later today to provide a private sector means of offering this type of insurance. So for those reasons, we would support a different kind of bill, a different approach, a private sector approach to this over this. So for those reasons, we oppose the bill.
Thank you. I think we'll be seeing that bill in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terry Durkin with the Roanoke Regional Chamber of Commerce. For the reasons stated, we oppose the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Durkin.
Mr. Chairman, Jody Roth with Virginia Retail Federation, and we also oppose the bill.
Thank you, Ms. Roth. Is there anybody in the Zoom room in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, there is no one in the Zoom room.
Okay, thank you. I believe Senator Marsden has a question.
Yeah, Senator Borsco, thank you for bringing this bill. There has to be a solution to this in a country like the United States, and we've fallen way behind with others. This is a lot to digest. I guess just the most immediate concern that hit me was people could join this program right before having a child, or knowing that a parent that they need to take their turn, for instance, in a group of siblings to watch to help supervise and care for a parent who is ill, and these kinds of things. Is there any way of avoiding in this that you jump into the policy and then you jump out afterwards? What is the solution to that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, that's a great question. And so that's why this is a universal program that would apply to everyone. Everyone who is working would be having very small amounts withdrawn from their, deducted from their income every month. About the cost, if you make about $60,000, it would be about the cost of a cup of Starbucks each paycheck. That's why I believe that this plan would be more successful than just a private plan alone, which you will hear about. I think that is definitely a component that could be a successful piece of this. But what you brought up is exactly what the challenge could be. Someone could opt in to a private plan right when they were pregnant or needed something. The cost of those deductible each month for the individuals, because it's not universal, are going to be pretty high. However, I respect that is a piece of what could be a larger one, but it's just like your unemployment insurance. It's taken automatically. Everybody would be in. Mm-hmm. And as I said earlier, if you happen to work for one of the great companies that already offers this, your policy doesn't have to be hindered whatsoever. But I also just want to point out, we know that the VEC has some challenges this year, and this would be housed inside the VEC. It's been brought to my attention that that's a lot for them to take on this year. And as you know, I've been working on this for a number of years. This year might not be the year for us to actually get this implemented, but I would like to make sure that we continue this conversation and continue to build upon the work that we have done over the past 3 years, because I do think that a universal program that would be affordable to everyone is what we ultimately want to achieve.
Senator Chairman, that was my second question. Thanks for answering it. The VEC is in really tough shape, so I would have a motion if this is the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm the chairman. Ms. Senator Marsden, you have a motion.
Yes, I move that we take the bill by for the year until we see what kind of shape VEC is in, and continue to study this bill and become familiar with it, because it's very, very technical and what have you. But I applaud the senator for doing this. We have to solve these problems.
Yes, so could we continue it?
We continue it for a year.
Thank you.
That's my motion.
Thank you, Senator Marsden. I'll second that motion. I'll just say that this bill adds a lot of new words to the code, and it affects every single
motion. You're chairman.
Yeah, I can. Hobie told me I couldn't. I remember.
Okay.
So I can second the motion. But this bill adds a lot of new words to the code, and it's a huge bill that affects a lot of people, and it definitely is something we need to keep looking at. So I'd support that motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Oh, got it, Hobie?
That's 3, no 0.
Okay.
Okay.
That's to recommend the bill be carried over.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another bill.
You have one more? Which one was the other one?
Equal pay?
You don't have any witnesses on that, right?
It's a salary history. Are there people on?
You don't have any witnesses on it though, right? I'm just a little bit worried because we've got
Yeah.
50 minutes to knock out another 7 bills. And
Okay.
I think there's a couple
I can
witnesses
do
here
it.
this
I
morning.
feel like I can do it by myself if you don't want.
All right,
to-
if you want to knock it out now, we can knock it out now.
Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So first, I have an amendment. Keith Martin and I were communicating, and he pointed out an error.
I'm
so-
sorry, Senator Boyce, just so the public's clear on the Zoom and in the room, we're dealing with Senate Bill 447.
Yes, Senate Bill 447, salary history. And just to start, I have an amendment.
Mr. Stevens, you have the text of the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boysko, on line 37, after the employer strike shall, insert may, so the employer may rely on wage or salary history to support a wage or salary hire.
Okay, is there a motion on that? I'll second the motion. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, go ahead, Senator Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. SB 447 adds a new section to the Virginia Labor Employment Code, joining 16 other states that have passed bipartisan legislation prohibiting an employer from seeking a salary history from a prospective employee at the beginning of the negotiation. Virginia's Equal Pay Act that was enacted in 1974 requires that employers pay their employees equally for equal work and allows for lawsuits against employers. It is clear, however, that employers need further guidance because women and minorities continue to earn far less than white men in Virginia. So let me tell you about the wage gap here in Virginia. Women in Virginia typically make 80 cents for every dollar paid to men. The national figure is 82%. Black women in Virginia typically make 60 cents for every dollar paid to white men. National figure, 63 cents. Latina women in Virginia typically make 54 cents for every dollar paid to white men. National figure, 55 cents. We are losing every single category there. The consequences of wage gaps are huge. On average, women employed full-time in the United States lose a combined total of nearly $930 billion with a B every year due to the wage gap. These lost wages mean women and their families have less money to support themselves, save and invest for future, and spend on goods and services. Women and their families, businesses, and the economy suffer as a result. Closing the gender wage gap would reduce poverty in families with a working woman by half. This is actually the 6th time I think I've introduced this legislation before the General Assembly. And this time I have changed it. I have narrowed it down. So it's just talking about the salary history, which is one of the 3 components that typically has it. Other states, 19 other states, including my home state of Alabama and Nebraska, the Chamber of Commerce in Massachusetts, have endorsed and supported equal pay updates. So this is bipartisan. This should not be a liberal or Democratic issue. And I'm going to keep working until we can get this done because we cannot look away knowing that, families who are in poverty and people in the workforce who have 2 or 3 jobs work harder for less money than others despite having the same qualification as their coworkers. And I'm going to say this, if you're tempted to work to be against this bill because you think it's too hard and because you don't really think it's a problem, because the wage earners are already, taking care of their families, it's very frustrating to me. And I know that I've talked to you individually about this. Women are bread workers. I watched my mother struggle. I know that with my salary history, I would be in trouble, even though I probably could go toe-to-toe on knowledge and ability to do a job as well as anybody else. But because I only make $18,000 a year, I would get kicked off if I were to go on Monster.com or on LinkedIn and applying for something because my job my salary would not qualify, and the metric would just kick me out of there, so I wouldn't even get an interview. This is a real problem. So I just want to go over a little bit more. The compliance with the bill is not difficult. You just don't request or rely on prior salary history unless the employee voluntarily provides it. That's it, okay? When prior salary history is used to set salaries of new employees, the employees who work for lower wages while finishing school and caring for family, working for nonprofits or government are paid less because as a new employee, quite often they go in and their new salary is based on their old salary. We should have a range that says this is what this job should be paid, and give it a range, and you set that depending on what your experience is. Employers must also provide a job applicant in the salary or the salary range to discuss compensation at the request of the employee. This is to ensure that wage gaps don't arise later in the hiring process. Women often ask for less when they negotiate than men do, and even though they're equally qualified. And research has shown that when there is a salary range given, the gap narrows. So, I've been working with the National Law Center. I will also point out that there's already in the current equal pay law a private right of action. We already have that. So seriously, this is just saying you give a range of your salary and you don't ask the person what their salary was coming in when you were starting the negotiations. This is not hard stuff. And we've seen even in our own House and Senate clerks, huge pay disparities a few years ago it was uncovered because somebody started when that was her first job and she was there for 23 years. The other person had come in with a higher range. I'm asking you all, let's report this bill. Let's get this done. The people of Virginia deserve this, and you can be the heroes.
All right. Senator, appreciate your sympathy for my $18,000 salary. And
yeah,
look forward to your support of my legislation that prohibits anybody from discriminating against a member of the General Assembly in employment. But I had a couple of questions about the bill before we kick it over to other questions. First of all, I believe the bill is drafted applies to every employer in the state regardless of size. Is that right?
That is probably that's my expectation.
I don't think there's any threshold on
No.
employees, right? Okay, and second, my second question was, the way it's written, the request for somebody's salary history could be made orally, right? So that an employer, like an employee could allege that, say during a job interview, the employer made a request orally for the salary history. Then there could be like a he said, she said about whether it was asked about the way it's written, right?
But if the employer provides the salary range, then I think you're all set because you already know what to expect. Am I wrong about that?
You're saying who provides the salary range, the prospective employer?
The employer provides the salary range. So if I'm coming into McDonald's, you tell me this job pays between $14 and $17 an hour. Do you want to apply? And I say yes. Right? That's not too hard.
I appreciate the clarification. I guess here's the scenario let me just give you a hypothetical. Suppose, for example, that there's a job interview that takes place. There's two people in a room. The door is closed. They come out of the room and somebody says, while I was in the room, the person asked me what I had made at my prior job, and then they bring a lawsuit for $1,000 in statutory damages and attorney's fees. That's something that this would allow, right?
Are you aware of that happening in any of the other states? Because I haven't heard about that happening.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Let's see,
I don't need any questions. You have a question?
No.
Okay.
No.
Senator Boyce, do you have anybody testify in favor?
Is there anybody online?
Is there anybody in the Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, we have two individuals wishing to speak in the Zoom.
Okay. Great. Can we call them up?
Andrea Johnson, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. Andrea Johnson with the National Women's Law Center here in support of SB 447. These are proactive measures that will help insulate Virginia businesses against wage gaps that are inadvertently arising in the workforce to begin with, and thus help them decrease their exposure to equal pay lawsuits. Research is already showing that these laws are helping close wage gaps in the states they've passed, and it's only been a few years. That's a remarkable tool, a simple tool. And a growing number of businesses are stopping using salary history because it's a simple thing to comply with and a simple thing to stop doing, and again, help them decrease their exposure to liability. And we're hearing over and over again from businesses, small and large alike, that being transparent about salary ranges is helping businesses more efficiently and effectively find and match with interested candidates. So we thank you for your consideration of this legislation. Again, this is a simple measure to implement. Just don't ask for the salary history and be transparent about how much you're hoping to pay, which might be the lower end, and how much you're willing to pay, the higher end. And as with all civil rights laws, it's for the job applicant to prove that the law has been violated. So to address the question that was raised earlier, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Ms. Johnson, this is Senator Serville. I had a quick question for you. In terms of your experience in other states, are you aware of how any other states may have handled the sort of he said, she said aspect of what was said in a room in terms of like whether or not they require some kind of corroboration before an action can be brought or something in writing?
So this law, like other civil rights law, I mean, would be a question that you could apply to any civil rights law. You know, it's for the employee or the job applicant to prove their case and present evidence that this was relied on. This is not an uncommon type of measure to see in civil rights law, a prohibition on an employer requesting certain information. I think we all understand well that employers can't ask somebody if they're pregnant during the hiring process. That is definitely discriminatory. And it's just set up in the same type of standard here. So this isn't more susceptible to he said, she said type of situation. This is also not the type of violation that anybody's going to want to go to court about. It's not worth their time. But it is important that we have actual teeth in the law to make sure employers rely on or follow the law, because it's been a common practice to do this for a long time. We need to make sure that they know that it needs to stop. And actually, to answer your other question about size threshold, all the states that have passed these laws, these salary history bans, have applied them to all size employers. That's common under equal pay law. So it's not been carved out for smaller employers.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next?
Susan Burke, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Yeah, thank you again. Sorry to take the floor again, but I'm here on behalf of AUW Virginia, and pay equity and closing the gender pay gap is one of AUW's highest priorities. We strongly support this bill. It's a concrete measure that would contribute towards efforts to eventually close the gap, which Senator Boysko so eloquently described. I'm glad Andrea was here because she has all the law on this, on the civil rights, but we know that from research that salary history bans work. There was a Harvard University study analyzed differences between areas with salary history bans and neighboring counties in states without bans, and found that the new laws generated substantial pay increases for Black employees, up by 13%, and female up by 18% for candidates who took new jobs. So it's a proven method of leveling the playing field, and we strongly support the bill, and we appreciate Senator Boysko for bringing this up.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Senator Marsden, I believe, has a question.
Thank you.
We need the opposition too, but go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. The advantage of a salary scale, if you will, or a range, is that you can place somebody on that based on some factors other than the fact that they're going to be doing the same job as someone else. So would this allow a company to account years of experience or education? And lastly, because we've really thrown this open to all companies of all kinds and what have you. So suppose there's a family-owned business. You know, mom works in it, dad works in it, the kids work in it, the cousins work in it, and what have you, and they pay them more because it's a family-owned company and what have you. Would they be covered in this situation? Would this bill apply to them?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, my understanding is that it would absolutely address the issues around the bona fide change, differences in skill and years worked. There's latitude for that. And I think if you have your own little business, you get to set what the salary range is. If you want to have someone who has been in your family who has been working there. Perhaps they are more, it would be more appropriate to have them have a higher range than somebody who's coming in who hasn't done it before. I have not really
Mr. Chairman?
engaged in that consideration.
Yeah, if I
Senator
could-
Marsden,
If I could follow up.
additional question. Go ahead.
It is, a situation where, a family brings in, a family member from who graduated from college or whatever, and they're coming into the family business, and all of a sudden they're making, more than, someone who has been there, or for a new employee coming in. Is there any accounting for that kind of a family-owned, closely held operation?
Mr. Chair, Senator Marsden, I would ask Andrea to answer that. My understanding is that this is trying to address pay equity so that a person who might have worked in a nonprofit, been a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, worked in the government, who is equally qualified to all of the other applicants, gets the same consideration for an equal salary as all of the rest of the applicants.
Senator Marsden.
Final question, as
one
long
last
as they don't
question.
ask for salary history and what have you, they can place you on a scale anywhere that they want to, and perhaps favor a family employee, a family member who has less experience and less years and less education.
Mr. Chair, I would be surprised if someone took action at that, right? Like, I mean, we already have the ability to have a private right of action if somebody feels that they're not being paid equitably. That's already in our books under the 1974 Equal Pay Act. So I don't see that this would change much of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody in opposition to the bill?
If you're in the Zoom room and wish to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
Thank you. Senator Boyce, anything you want to say? Wrap it up quickly. We've got a
Yeah,
long line behind you.
I would just like to say that this is a simple thing that I'm asking. It has worked in other states and has helped to close the gap. At this point, we are behind Abu Dhabi in equal pay laws and pay equity. And I would like Virginia to be at the top of that. And I would ask that you report the bill, and let's get it to the full committee and on to the floor.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. Is there any, look, I feel some discussion coming from Senator Obenshain. Senator Obenshain?
Yeah, and I appreciate what Senator's trying to do. I mean, I think the goal of equal pay is one that we all ought to link arms and work towards. I think that this bill is predicated upon the belief that there's cause and effect, and I have a hard time making that connection between asking for salary history and discriminatory pay practices. I know you say that, but I have a hard time making that connection. And it also seems to me that, it kind of treats all businesses the same. I mean, I may be, in my little law practice, I may decide I want to hire a new lawyer. And quite honestly, I don't really want to set a pay scale because I don't know who's out there. I don't know what their salary expectations are. And it may wind up being a first-year lawyer right out of law school. It may be somebody who's got 20 years worth of experience who's coming to me. And, I have a hard time figuring out, what am I going to do? Set a pay scale from, $30,000 to $200,000? I mean, I guess I could do that and qualify. But, if I've got, let's just say, 10 men who apply for that job, why shouldn't I be able to pick a really good one whose salary history shows that, he was earning less than the other guys applying for the job, and I might be able to pay him more than he's been earning before, and we both get the benefit of the bargain. He gets a better position. I get a highly qualified person for less than some of the other people who are applying for the job. So I have grave concerns about this. And that's not a question, that's just a comment.
Sure.
I
Thank
thank you
you.
for your
Yeah.
thoughtful presentation.
Senator Marsden, give a motion.
Thank you. I have a motion. I motion that the bill be reported with a delayed enactment clause, 1 year, to allow us to catch up with some of the experiences of other states and what have you. So I think this is a good bill. It's been narrowed down, to a reasonable thing about not asking for that. And I hope companies have and most of them do, I think, have salary ranges that they have in mind and can account for experience and education and, family matters kind of muck things up. It might be easier to look at a company of a certain size before we get into this. But for right now, I think the bill should be reported to the full committee with a delayed enactment clause of 1 year.
So Senator Marsden, I think procedurally, I think the first thing we would need to do is adopt the delayed enactment clause. So I guess.
Okay, so that's a motion to add that to the bill?
No. I'll second that motion. So it's a 1 year delay?
1 year delay.
Okay, I'll second that.
Delayed enactment.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so I think Senator Marsden had a motion to recommend reporting the bill.
With that amendment, I move the bill be reported.
Okay, and I'll second that. So it's a motion to recommend reporting the bill. It's been seconded by me. And I'll just note that, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of information about this, and I've read about the studies that you have talked about, and there is cause and at least there's correlation in the states that have adopted it. And I think this bill is also, I would note, substantially narrowed down from the bill that was heard last year and in prior years. And this is a much, much, much smaller bite than what we've looked at before. And so, having said that, I would support it. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. Get that, Hobie? Okay.
2 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. Next up, who's got something quick? Cosgrove, you have a witness, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't we take Senator Cosgrove?
Thank you. This won't take long, sir.
Senate Bill 646.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, basically this bill deals with protecting the opportunity of health freedom for workers. Vaccination is an important personal health decision that people should make free of their own volition. And many people who decline to take the COVID-19 vaccine do so for religious reasons or medical reasons, and we should protect the right of those people to practice their faith and beliefs. The threat of job and income loss should not prevent people from making the fundamental decisions about their personal health that are right for them. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, this bill would basically allow workman's compensation to be paid if someone was to be released from their employment because of their choice not to have a COVID-19 vaccine. And I have the Secretary of Labor here and others from the Governor's office to briefly speak to the bill.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, you want to come up and address us?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the Senator said, I'm Brian Slater. I'm the Secretary of I was going to say Secretary of Administration, not this time, Secretary of Labor, here to support Senate Bill 646, which is a priority of the Governor's agenda. Bill seeks to provide unemployment benefits for workers who are fired for misconduct, for not adhering to an employer's mandate, for the worker to receive a vaccine. The bill just simply states that, related to misconduct, that it's not to be included in an employee's refusal to receive any part of the vaccine or booster. The governor has said repeatedly and clearly that he believes everyone should get vaccinated and that everyone should receive a booster. He's done so himself, but he also believes that individuals, it's important to defend the right of workers to make personal decisions about their health or their personal beliefs. To ensure that protection, he's asking for your support of Senate Bill 646, which includes the refusal to take a COVID-19 vaccine among the criteria to be eligible to receive unemployment benefits. Basically, many people who decline to take the COVID-19 vaccine do so for religious reasons or other personal reasons, and that we should protect the right of individuals to practice their faith and or their beliefs.
Thank you, Secretary.
Mr.
Senator,
Chairman.
any questions for Senator Cosgrove or the Secretary?
I would just like to say before you take action, Mr. Chairman, that I've been vaccinated, okay? And I think everybody should. But I really don't want to tell people they have to. And I especially don't want to fire somebody and then all of a sudden their family becomes destitute because they're not getting the same kind of work and unemployment benefits that others would.
Senator, I have a quick question for
Sure.
you. If somebody were to claim a religious exemption, or sorry, a religious reason for refusing the vaccine, isn't it true that they could sue under the Virginia Values Act, I think we passed, that allows people to sue if they're discriminated against based on their religious beliefs, or maybe even under federal law, maybe?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd say you're probably right. You're the attorney. I'm not.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. How long is that suit going to take? And who's going to feed that person's children?
That's true. Okay. Any other questions to the patron? Anybody else in support? Is there anybody in opposition to the bill? You want to check the Zoom?
If you are in the Zoom room and wish to speak in regards to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
Thank you for that. Senator Marsden?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cosgrove, we've already started down the road in the Senate of a different approach to this through the Virginia, the Wellness Act, to allow employers to do incentives, disincentives, if you will, for taking the vaccine. And so this is in sort of in contradiction of that. We'd be kind of putting things into a situation where there'd be some conflict of policy there. So with that in mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd move that the bill be PBI'd.
Mr. Chairman, can I, before we act on that, just
Sure,
say
Senator
something?
Obenshain.
I'm pretty concerned. I like Senator Cosgrove. I support vaccinations. If you look at the demographic data, it's even minority populations that have some of the highest rates of people who decline vaccination. And I don't know why people decline vaccinations, but this is something that is going to work a real hardship on people of variety of backgrounds, particularly minority communities in which people are at increasing rates declining these vaccinations. So, I would hope that we would not add insult to injury and pile on by declining to provide unemployment compensation. We're already letting people fire employees for not getting vaccinations. Why would we say you can't get unemployment for it too? That just strikes me as mean.
Thank you, Senator Obenshain. I'm going to second the motion. I'm just going to note that I appreciate the senator's concern on this issue, and I know there's a lot of people that sincerely believe that the vaccines carry issues, and I would just note, though, that this bill is sort of, I think, in direct contradiction to two bills, one that's already reported off the Senate floor, I think Senator Saslaw's bill that had to do with workers' comp benefits for people who don't get vaccinated, and then Senator Marsden's bill, which is also reported, I believe, to the House, that had to do with that. And so, we would be sending two different messages with this. And so the motion before us is to recommend PBIing the bill to the full committee. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. 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 Anybody opposed? No. Okay.
Well, I'm opposed to, but it doesn't matter.
Thanks, Senator Cosgrove. See you at full committee.
Wasn't it Joe Biden who said that these vaccinations were unsafe?
I don't think so. So we've got about 20 minutes left, and I know we have a date with Senator Favola at least at 6 o'clock. No, I'm not calling you up, Senator Favola. And Senator Barker. Senator Peake and Reeves. No, only one. It's only one of his bills. Yeah, he's got a second bill. Senator Reeves, how long would your second bill take?
Not long at all.
Your unemployment comp one? Yep. Okay. So first of all, by the way, Senator Reeves, I believe you wanted us to strike
Line item number 52, that line.
No, you want us to strike Senate Bill 331, I think,
Yeah,
too,
we
right?
can, yes,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
okay, is there a motion to recommend striking Senate Bill 331? Motion and a second, all those in favor, aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that bill's stricken. So now, Senator Reeves, Senate Bill 769.
I just need a line item amendment to the bill.
Okay, what's,
With-
Tom, do you have the amendment, or?
Just in consultation with VEC, they're comfortable with the whole bill. They just would like line 52 where it says the commission shall promulgate regulations. They'd rather just have the bill in the whole and work with the bill as it is.
So the
without
motion
having
is to
promulgate
strike
stuff.
line 52 from the bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a motion? I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? No, okay, so the amendment's adopted. So Senator Reeves, I saw this bill come through and it doesn't even have a description or anything on it, which it looks like it wasn't drafted by DLS. So could you tell us sort of where this bill comes from? And it looks pretty
Mr. Chairman,
prescriptive to me about what it's trying to.
I have been working, all of us have probably gotten VEC complaints. I don't know a Senate office or a delegate's office that hadn't gotten VEC complaints trying to get people that earn those payments and others that have never gotten paid. And this is a bill that has come forward as good practices for program integrity because, you know, there was a report that just came out from JLARC that says the state faces at least $86.7 million in improper payments made to the people who are not eligible for unemployment, and that the interim report by the Legislative Watchdog Agency estimates that the total cost of unemployment trust fund could reach $930 million after the state completes all the appeals. That includes an estimated $70 million in fraud. And these are some of the best practices. We've been working with VEC to try to get these put in there. And just if you look at Virginia's unemployment system has too high of an improper payment rate. The Commonwealth's 3-year improper payment rate is higher than the federal government allows. And over the past 3 years, under COVID, VEC gets payments wrong at least initially 11.46% of the time. We spent an estimated $40 million on unemployment to prisoners, and we can't afford to let money keep going out the door to ineligible people. So this is a best practices bill to put some program integrity into it. I do have one person to testify to it.
Senator Obenshain.
Quickly, is this based on the JLARC report or what?
It's part of a result of the JLARC report to try to clean it up.
Yeah, I mean,
Senator Obenshain.
It takes those issues and tries to rectify some of that.
Okay.
Okay, but Senator Reeves, I think the question that all three of us have been asking ourselves is this a JLARC bill, or where did this come from? Who wrote this? Is VEC?
It came from me in cooperation with VEC and some other folks that are really tuned up into how to fix some of these things across the country and what are the best practices. So we tried to pull together a bunch of this. I have a visiting fellow, Joe Horvath, who's should be on Zoom or whatever it is, if he's available to help speak to it, how we kind of came across some of these best practices in some of the other states.
Okay. Senator Marsden.
Thank you. Senator Reeves, I'm not overly familiar with, VEC. It's just not something that I have been engaged with in my tenure here in the legislature. But wouldn't this best be covered by regulatory efforts of putting these kinds of things into regulation, which, will tighten down all the nuts and bolts here that the agency would have? And, with the new Secretary Slater, wouldn't that be a way of proceeding here that would get greater public vetting than 5 minutes in front of the three of us and a quickie in front of the big committee and what have you? It just seems to me that might be a better way for the new administration to accomplish this.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marston, line 52 took that out of the bill at the request of VEC. They don't have a problem with the basic premise of the bill and the program integrity measures that are in the bill itself. Could it be broader? Certainly, but this is basically to help stop the bleeding, some of the best practices to stop some of the fraud that we've had and help the VEC.
All right, Senator Morris, let's get to his witness really quick. And there's no question that fraud and unemployment has been a big issue over the last 2 years. And who's your witness again, Senator Reeves?
Joe Horvath.
Is Mr. Horvath in the Zoom?
Yes, Senator Chairman, he's been added to the panelists so he can speak.
Okay, Mr. Horvath, can you give us maybe 2 minutes? We're really under the gun here on time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make it extremely quick. So I'm Joe Horvath. I'm with Opportunity Solutions Project. So the bill is the result of what about 9 states have done since the onset of the pandemic, which is codify some best practices, which I know you've heard a couple of times. And the reason you want to do that is to set a good baseline. And these are things that are widely known and widely understood throughout workforce agencies across the country. Things like cross-checks of pre-existing databases, prison records, new hire records, things like verifying identities and protecting user identities and flagging suspicious activity. It's a relatively non-controversial issue. It's been passed in 9 states since, I think, November of 2020. 5 of those states were unanimous, signed by governors of both parties, supported by workforce agencies, and a few states where they were legally allowed to do that. And in fact, a lot of the things contained in this bill you could find on the United States Department of Labor's Office of Inspector General's website, and they're lobbying Congress to enact some of these things. So the best bet is probably to just get a bit ahead of the curve on that, if you could, specifically with a state commonwealth like Virginia, where there's a routine executive overturn and therefore agency overturn. Setting a good baseline in statute is important, which is, I suspect, potentially why VEC was okay with letting it stay in statute as opposed to reg.
Thank you. Any questions to the witness? Okay. Is there anybody else in support or in opposition in support of the bill in the Zoom room?
If you're in the Zoom and would like to speak in regards to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
Is there anybody opposed to the bill in the room or in Zoom?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
Thank you. Senator, I think that the big question we're struggling with is whether this kind of level of detail belongs in the code or whether it belongs in policy. And I mean, this is awfully detailed language to be sticking in the code. It seems to me the kind of language we'd be back here amending every other year for the next 10 years, the way I look at it. I mean, it looks like good policy and good management practice, but that's my reaction. Do you have any thoughts about that as you wrap up?
If you want to put line 52 back in, I'm just telling you what VEC told me. They'd rather have this in the code so they can work from these guidelines, as the witness stated. So if you want to add it in to tell them to do extra work and promulgate more regulations, I don't have a problem with it, but I think this is a good baseline.
Is VEC here?
Anybody here for VEC? No.
All right.
I'll see 'em.
And Senator, you know, in their absence, I'm just really uncomfortable. Like, this is like putting these kinds of 52 lines of handcuffs on them, which is basically what this does. But
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Obenshain.
And I, you know, I do, I'm not thrilled usually with putting new language in the code, but this, I mean, I look at this, and I don't see any part of it that doesn't make sense. And if this adds, you know, guardrails for the process for VEC and is going to help prevent a repeat of the kind of pandemonium that has existed over the course of the past 18 to 24 months, I don't know why we wouldn't do this. I don't hear an objection from them.
Thank you, Senator Obenshain. Senator Marsden, were you going to say something or no?
You know, just the you know, the fact that, you know, why would we, you know, they want to put in regulations to implement this, so that would sort of be a replication of what we're putting in code. And you know, I understand Senator Obenshain's, you know, point that there's nothing in here that is probably not somewhere akin to best practice, but but all of a sudden now you've got a violation of law instead of a violation of regulation, and that's what VEC is used to doing, as any agency, is they're used to enforcing their regulations. When I first came to Richmond, somebody said, if you want something actually done, put it in regulation. If you just put it in the law, is there anybody there to enforce it? And so I like regulations because that's what people pay attention to, and they'll be easy to modify and change through the administration processes.
Right. Mr.
And so how do we shift this to a suggestion to get them to get it into?
All right, Senator Obenshain.
Yeah, just a query for consideration. Is that the same approach we applied to the Department of Criminal Justice Services last year?
Appreciate the suggestion, Senator Obenshain. Senator Reeves, I think, this won't be heard in full committee for another week, but I can tell you that right now that without feedback from VEC, hearing from them about this, because this just seems to
Mr.
me.
Chairman, I've heard from BEC. That's why I removed the line. And I don't disagree with both of you on the fact of that. But the reality is, if you look, it's major muscle movements. Commission, if you look on line 30, the commission shall recover any improper overpayment of benefits to the fullest extent authorized by this title and federal law. Well, that's come out in the report.
Okay.
We're 70 million in the hole already in fraudulent obtained from the benefits, but we don't know if they've done it. And I will tell you this, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my staff has spent an enormous amount of time on VEC claims, trying to help those people that needed the benefits to get it, whereas we had a lot of fraudulent claims going everywhere. And it's been difficult, and months and months and months, and people are not even 30 days from the street, they're on the street and trying to fix VEC, and it's been a nightmare. And this is one step that we can say, hey, we're trying to fix VEC. We're giving them some major tools to which they can put in their toolbox and start day one.
All right, Senator, I think Senator Marsden has a motion.
Yeah, thanks. Senator Reeves, I'd like to do a little homework on this thing. Can we take this by for a week and just let us cogitate over this? And, there's a lot here, I think, that's good. Do we have the bandwidth to do that, timing-wise?
Yeah, and Senator Reeves, I don't know when our next meeting is going to be. We're going to have one because there's no way we're getting through the rest we have. I will get to Favola and we'll get to Barker. I'm not sure if we're going to get to Peak. But
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
But we just had a massive JLARC report on this, and a lot of people put a lot of time in. This isn't a JLARC bill, and I just think before we go down this road, I think we need more
Mr. Chairman, that's why I'm
feedback.
here with that JLARC report right here.
Okay. All right. Well, without objection, the bill will go by for the day. Bye for the day.
All right.
Thank you, Senator Reeves. Next up, let's do Senator Favola. This is a bill I believe there's a lot of peace in the valley on. Maybe we can make this quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this will be very quick. There is a lot of peace in the valley. We're talking about Senate Bill 15. And what this does, first, I'd like you to adopt an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
So moved.
Anybody, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Aye. Great.
Thank you,
Substitute's
Mr.
adopted. Tom, is that going to be online or are you going to distribute the paper?
Mr. Chairman, it's online now.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the substitute really is just sort of technical explanations. For example, on the line early on, I think it's line 14, I say pay for a percentage or portion of the employee's income loss. That's the kind of sort of change that.
Senator, can I try and short circuit you a little bit? Is there anybody opposed to the bill in the room?
I don't believe so. Do you want me to give you a 30-second explanation of what the bill does? You love it? Wonderful. I'll stop while I'm ahead. And I have a speaker but we're going to say speaker in the virtual world. Thank you for linking on, but we probably don't need you.
Second.
Okay. Senator Favola, I think your bill's in pretty good shape, so.
It's in very good shape.
Yeah, so unless you want to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
Favorite bill of yours in a long time.
I got to quit while I'm ahead. It's fine. So is this a unanimous
Okay,
vote?
let me just ask really quick for the record, is there anybody in opposition to the bill, either in Zoom or in the room? I didn't think so. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, recommending reporting.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. Senator Favola, see you at dinner in a few minutes.
Well, I have one other bill, and this is also a
do?
good bill, and it deserves the same amount of enthusiasm. Senate Bill 624.
Senator Favola, that one is tied to my bill. And I
It's
think
not. It's a subset of your bill.
Yeah, I know. I think we need to take them up at the same time.
Oh, you want to talk? Do you want me to hold on this one?
Yeah, I think.
Fine.
I'm not going to do mine today. I think you and I just need to do them together at the same time, so.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I will call this a win. Have a
Okay.
lovely evening.
Thank you. All right, Senator Barker. Senate Bill 631. I believe that Senator Stewart has Senate Bill 365, and he's requested that we recommend rolling his bill into Senator Barker's 631. Is there a motion?
I would so move.
I'll second the motion. All those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? Got that, Hobie? Okay, Senator Barker. Oh, and Senator Stewart would be chief co-patron.
All right.
Got it. Go ahead, Senator Barker.
Certainly.
See if you can be quick.
This is dealing with the overtime issue that we've been dealing with in various ways, or not dealing with it the last 2 years. There's been sort of a tortured path that's been laid out in front of us, and what we need to do is make sure that we're moving forward in a cohesive fashion on a lot of things.
Senator Barker, are you aware of anybody who's opposed to this? Oh, actually, there is some opposition.
There
isn't
is some
Okay.
opposition.
Yeah, okay.
Or
So,
some
okay.
changes that people would like to have considered here. Basically, this is following on the federal law, the Fair Labor Standards Act, which was adopted in 1938 and has been around since then. And one of the issues that it deals with is overtime. There are some significant issues. One is who's covered under it. Second is the statute of limitations in terms of appealing things, and the third is damages. So those are three different issues that have been addressed. There was legislation that was passed last year, and I think part of what it was represented with the patron proposing it was that it was seen to be desirable to have a state law that would be consistent with the federal Fair Labor Standards Act that was passed in 1938. And that there are advantages to having a state law here. One, it's easier to get into the courts more quickly than under federal courts. And another advantage there, just in Virginia, we don't have summary judgment, and so therefore it's seen as a little more favorable to the plaintiffs in the dealing with these situations. There were a lot of issues in terms of how things were presented last year, what people's understanding was of the law, and clearly a lot of people misunderstood various things along the way. This was represented as being consistent with the act, but it actually has some significant differences in there.
So, Senator Barker, just so I'm clear, is your purpose of your bill in part is to conform the existing statute to what I think most of us believe was represented to us, the bill did
What
at
was
the time.
represented last year at various meetings when the bill was
Okay.
heard. And one of the things it does is make it, what this does is bring it much more in consistent with the Fair Labor Standards Act. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but that means it's at least has that as a starting point on things. The patron, agreed during the summer to some changes, which were incorporated in the budget that we passed during special session back in August. But what we need to do is move forward from there. What I think it makes sense is to, what I don't want to have us do is basically play ping pong, where when one set of people are sort of in power, that you go far one way, and then, when the other side gets in power, then we go way back the other way and, have things that don't survive there. I think it's better to have a consensus on things and to build compromise that can get that worked. I think that what we need to do is start with this, which is sort of more of the taking it more directly to the Fair Labor Standards Act, but then build from that in terms of how we can reach consensus and compromise on things. For example, one of the things that I would like to have considered as we're moving forward at some point is the worker categories. I mean, right now, we have farm workers and domestic workers incorporated, but they're not in the Fair Labor Standards Act. So this bill, as it's presented here, does not have that, and I think that's something we need to take a look at over time, because if we're denying overtime.
Senator, we're pushing 6 o'clock, and I think we have some people who want to speak in favor and against, and so
All right.
maybe we could hear from them really
Well, I think
quick.
we've addressed a lot of issues, and I'd be happy to work with people on both sides to see
Okay.
if we can move forward on it further this year, and if not, then work over
Thanks.
next year on it.
All right, thanks, Senator Peake. I don't think there's any way we're getting your bill tonight, so I don't know if you want to keep hanging out or not, but,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I would just point out that last week this was in judiciary, and I had a witness sitting out for 3.5 hours as we went through
Same,
judiciary.
you have a witness?
Yes, I had a witness, and then you came up, because it's my turn, and you said, we need to send this to Commerce and Labor. So now here I am in Commerce and Labor, and I've had a witness sitting here for 2+ hours. Is there anybody opposed to my bill? Could we at least ask that?
Yeah, there
All
is.
right, then let's go to next week.
Yeah, and Senator Peake, I owe you several beers, it sounds like, so.
So when's our next meeting?
I have to set it, we have to get it done by Monday, so it'll be sometime this week, probably Thursday or Friday.
And I'll be collecting at some point, not at y'all's dinner.
Apologies, Senator Peake.
Next, all right, we'll wait.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Senator Peake. I didn't realize you had a witness, so I might have taken you earlier, but,
Still here? Yes.
okay. All right, so we're going to put a fuse on this. Hobie, if you could give 5 minutes per side, those in favor, 5, and those opposed, 5. Batter up.
You want me to wait till there's a clock?
Now go for it.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Just want to thank the patron and others for their work on this. This legislation does align Virginia to the Fair Labor Standards Act and will provide consistency for Virginia employers, both public and private. I'm happy to answer any questions on the exemptions or overtime statutes that are in the Fair Labor Standards Act, if that would be helpful.
Thank you. Next up.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Ralston King with Virginia Auto Dealers Association. We support this bill. We thank Senator Barker for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chair, good evening. Jeremy Bennett with the Virginia Association of Counties. We asked Senator Stewart to put in his version of the bill. One of the unintended consequences of the legislation from last year was an interpretation from the Department of Labor Industry to do away with the ability of public agencies to provide comp time for overtime hours worked. So as long as this bill addresses that issue, we thank the patron for bringing it forward and are in support.
Okay. Next up.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Kate Baker on behalf of Virginia Retail Federation, we also support the bill.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Next up.
Mr. Chairman, Lisa Stye with Virginia Education Association. We support this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Stein. Is there anybody in the Zoom room who's in support?
If you are in the Zoom room and you would like to speak in support of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers in support.
Thank you. Is there anybody in opposition who's in the room who would like to be heard?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. Greg Ackerman with the DC Metro Building Trades. We want to thank the patron for putting in the bill. I believe there probably do need to be some changes, but our primary concern is simply that the damages and statute of limitations align with the federal law as opposed to the Virginia wage theft law that was passed 2 years ago. Those damages are consistent with when workers are simply not paid for all wages due. And so we believe that employer failure to pay overtime should align with the Virginia Wage Theft Act as opposed to the federal law, which is not as generous. So we hope to work with the patron to correct those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Thought I would see you here.
Mr. Chairman, Craig Kerwood. I'm an employment lawyer here in town. I'm also a member of the Virginia Employment Lawyers Association and Virginia Trial Lawyers Association. And on behalf of those two agencies, we oppose this bill as well for the same reasons that Mr. Ackerman said. The FLSA is not perfect. It is 1938, as the sponsor pointed out, and there are a lot of loopholes and updates needed. And the Virginia Overtime Wage Act really only affects employers who cheat their employees out of fair wages and paying overtime fairly. We're willing to work with the sponsor on amendments, but we oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Charlie Jackson, representing the Service Employees International Union. We oppose the bill as drafted. We're looking forward to working with the senator between now and full committee. And we do support the aspect of the bill that was in Senator Stewart's bill about comp time in lieu of overtime for public sector workers. We do think that the bill that was passed last year, the special session compromise, which I think is an exemption for auto dealers and volunteers, is where the committee should land on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the Zoom room who's opposed?
If you are in the Zoom and you would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
Thank you. Senator Barker, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, it's 6:04. So, I think that we can have a little conversation over the next week and see where we are and see if there may be some opportunities for compromise that can move everything forward there, so.
All right, thank you, Senator Barker. Is there a motion on the bill?
Take the bill back or I would move to recommend reporting as it is.
Right.
Not sure I recommend it.
Senator Marsden?
Do you want to take this back to our next meeting?
Senator Barker, I don't detect a consensus up here as to exactly what to do. Would you have a problem if we carried it over?
I'd be
Not
fine
carry it
either
over,
way.
I'm sorry,
Either
buy
way.
for the day for our next meeting and then
Sure.
maybe make a motion. We'll figure it out then.
Okay.
I'll just say, Senator Barker, I mean, I think the issue here is that a lot of things have come crawling out after the law that passed last year. There was a lot of unintended consequences I don't think anybody anticipated because we thought we were voting on a different policy that we ended up voting on. Some of us actually like the policy that it turned out to be, but others don't. And
Mr. Chairman, I'm uncomfortable losing the stolen wage aspects of things if that
Okay.
becomes in doubt or confusing in some way, because
Okay.
that's,
Well, without objection, we'll take this bill by to our next meeting, okay?
All right.
Later this week,
Thank you.
all right?
Sure.
Thanks. And having said that, it's now 6:06. We're out of time, but we have about 3 or 4 bills left we got to do, and we'll do those at our meeting later this week. So committee will rise.